I'd rise to take a short call, Mr Speaker. I'm speaking on the Taxation Annual Rates, Employee Allowances and Remedial Matters Bill, which is an omnibus bill which deals with the Income Tax Act, the Tax Administration Act, GST Act and Child Support Act. I was not on the Select Committee, so I'm not going to go into the detail of some of the more technical matters, things like the tax treatment of black hole expenditure or FATCA, or also even things to do with deregistered charities. But what I will talk about is around employee allowances. So, first of all, can I say that many of the changes in this bill are about tidying up some of the petty rules that have been implemented under the former Minister, Peter Dunn, including things like the tax on plainclothes police officers and accommodation tax on earthquake rebuild workers. So some of these changes are actually to tidy things up that the government themselves, with one of the shonky support partners, got wrong. Now, I think it's fair to say that in dealing with tax, others, my colleagues Darian Fenton and Dr Dave Clark, have talked about some of the elements of tax policy. I want to keep some of this simple. One of the groups of people who pay tax in this country who don't ever get to not comply, who don't ever get to not pay what they are due to pay is, of course, wage and salary earners. Wage and salary earners, low and middle income New Zealanders, they pay their tax. It's taken out before they receive their pay, they pay their tax, they pay their share. And in fact, as my colleague Darian Fenton said, under this government they ended up paying more GST, which again they cannot avoid. And when they buy their food, when they buy the basic things that they need day to day, they pay their tax. They can't avoid it. Unlike the multi-millionaires that avoid tax, those that Dr Clark talked about, who in fact have massive assets and yet supposedly have incomes of less than $70,000 a year. Well, this is just ridiculous. The fact of the matter is, people who control more than $50 million worth of assets with personal income of less than $70,000 so that they don't pay tax. And then, of course, there's all of the other devices that those at the top use to avoid paying tax. Things like company structures, trusts, overseas bank accounts to avoid paying tax. Why is that not something that the government deal with in their tax reform? Why is it that there's plenty of scrutiny on beneficiaries and beneficiary fraud and none of us would support people ripping off the system? But why isn't the same scrutiny put on those at the top? Those that have benefited significantly from the actions of this government, those who got massive tax cuts while low and middle income New Zealanders actually had to pay more tax. Why isn't it that there is a focus on those people at the top who got the big tax cuts and many of whom are ripping off the system, unlike ordinary New Zealanders paying wages and salaries, buying items on GST, using all of their income, in fact, to survive? And I regularly visit budget services, and I just want to say to people like Bill English, who say that inequality isn't getting worse in this country. Bill English says that inequality isn't getting worse. Will you tell that to the budget services, who tell you how many more people are seeing that they would call the working poor? People, 40% of the people that they see who actually are in work and cannot make ends meet. They are the people who've been harmed by the tax policies of this government. They're the people who've been harmed by the fact that this government has no plans for our economy, to strengthen our economy, to provide decent jobs that pay wages that people can actually live on. These are some of the structural challenges that we should be dealing with, but the government just sits on their hands, business as usual, looking after their mates, no ideas. Well, David Clark did a very good job of outlining the comprehensive and positive plans that Labor have to change those structural problems in our economy and have a brighter and more positive future.
I call the honourable member David Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This bill has gone through the whole process of the Parliament and is well canvassed by all political parties and